In my last video I ran through 13 EVs coming in 2020. The Porsche Taycan, the Renault Zoe, the DS3 Crossback E-Tent, good lord what a name, Skoda Citigo e-iV, oh god what a name, VW e-Up, the Seat Me Electric, Peugeot E-208, the Mercedes-Benz EQA Mini Electric, BMW iX3, the Seat Elborn, the Vauxhall or Opel Corsa E, and the VW ID3. So here's another 13 for you to get unreasonably excited about. The Peugeot E2008. I think this is quite a good looking car actually. I see quite a few of them. In fact, a friend of mine has one, a diesel one, so hopefully this will help them change. And pretty roomy inside from what I remember. Strangely small boot though. But I see a lot of them about, so it'd be great to have an electric version of this as well. It should come along in about April, I think. It'd be about £29,000 with a range of 193 miles. I don't have too much more to say about it because it's difficult to get too excited about just another ICE car with an electric drivetrain shoved inside it, but you know, the more the merrier. I just hope, while we're on the subject of Peugeot, I just hope that they release that E-Legend concept because that's absolutely stunning, that car. But we're not going to see that, are we? The Kia Soul EV. I've also done a video about this, so you may already know that I love the look of it. And I would have bought one had it come out before the Niro. So as you probably know, the Soul is built on the same platform as the e-Niro, so it's got the same drivetrain. And I drive the e-Niro, and I know it's brilliant. So we already know that the Soul is going to be a fantastic car. It's just whether or not you like the look of it, really. It's a little bit less kind of space in the back, I think, than the Niro, but actually you've got the height, because it's quite a tall car, so you've got the height there. So I think it makes a lot of sense as a small family car. Okay, well, let's talk about specs. It's, well, pretty much the same as the e-Niro, actually. The range is a little bit less, but everything else is pretty much the same. Release date, it should be, well actually it might be January, but I think it's probably more likely Feb. The big thing about the Soul, it's got an app, which is what the Niro should have had, and in fact the Niro does have in Korea. So it has an app. You've got to wonder why they didn't include the app before. I mean, they already had the app ready. It must have just been them not wanting to spend the money on the telemetrics module. That's all I can think of. It's baffling. Anyway, on a similar theme, Kia's absolute rubbishness in producing EVs has really bothered me. They say it's due to not realising demand, but I still think that's bollocks. They had Robert De Niro doing the marketing of it. They got the car of the year. They produced a car with a relatively big battery at a good price, and they couldn't order enough batteries. It's crazy. So there's no doubt in my mind that they make a loss on every Niro sold. But when you consider the marketing boost they got for it, they probably just consider that as a marketing cost. Look at us with our eco credentials. Just wait a year if you want a car. It really annoys me when the Niro is such a good car. They were supposed to sell 900 e-Niros in the UK this year, and they haven't. Anyway, let's hope they can make enough of these in 2020, because they've actually got some competition this year. The Skoda Vision IV. Is it IV or is it 4 as a Roman numeral? I can't tell. IV makes me think intravenous. Anyway, it's probably the least stupid name Skoda are giving an EV in 2020. So it is pretty cool looking car, I think. Quite funky, quite sort of muscular. I get I-Pace vibes from the side view, and that's no bad thing. But it was unveiled at Geneva, and it will apparently be £30,000 with an 83 kilowatt battery and a range of 311 miles, which actually makes it a pretty good deal. And it's built on VW's MEB platform, so that should make it efficient and roomy and all the rest of it. It was unveiled as a concept with a pretty out there interior, actually. I think the outside will look pretty much the same as it does, but the interior I'm sure will be much more sensible and less bling or whatever that is that we're looking at there. I also have a problem with steering wheels that aren't round. In fact, I think the new Roadster, the new Tesla Roadster's steering wheel is also not round, isn't it? So I'm sure once I get in it, I won't have a problem with it being round or not. Anyway, let's see how close to the concept they get, and if they can actually make enough of them. My hunch is that the specs will be far less attractive once it's released. Ironically, the interior will be far more attractive, probably. The Honda E. I made a video about this car because I've pre-ordered one because I love it so much. Whether we end up getting one or not, I don't know, because it'll depend on whether we stay in the same house and whatever else. At the moment, I've said before, at the moment we live in the city, and that was the reason we didn't get a big Model X. But it also means that we do more city driving, I suppose, than much else. So the Honda E would be perfect for us. We're considering moving out into the country, though, so if that happens, there'll be no reason to get a Honda E, unfortunately. So fingers crossed we stay in the city just for that. I actually find it more exciting than the Taycan, probably because it's so much more practical, and it's cute. And as we've already established, I seem to like hairdresser cars. Putting the design aside, its range and cost is kind of Apple-esque in its ratio. It's it's expensive. It doesn't matter what the cost is, because Honda should be applauded for doing something different. They've started from scratch and they've made an interesting car that just happens to be an EV. It looks cool, and really, if you live in the city and you have the cash, it looks like it'd be a damn good car to buy. Because this car exists, I struggle to get too excited about any other cars of this size. I overuse the Apple and iPhone analogy quite a lot, but when the iPhone was released, it was so wildly different to anything else. But it didn't have 3G, and yet still people bought it. It cost a fortune as well. So you could argue that people are just idiots that buy things that look shiny, and I'm one of those people. Again, look at Fully Charged video, because they go through it. They've actually driven it, and of course I haven't. I've just salivated at pictures of it. So, next up we have the Polestar 2. And I have to say, I'm a complete sucker for the Polestar. Everything about it appeals to me, except perhaps it running the Google operating system. I'm not sure I trust Google not to track my every move and advertise every step of the way. Then again, if it was Apple, I wouldn't trust it to get it out of the driveway. They're aiming for the Model 3 market. Decent range and not cheap, but classy as hell. Compared to the Model 3, it's a more muscular car. It's quite angular, like a squat SUV, and I love it. I love the look of it. And being a Volvo company, there's that innate feeling of safety and quality that you would get from having a Volvo. Would I spend $46,400 on this, or buy the Model 3 instead? This has 150 kilowatt charging. They say is 80% charge in 24 minutes, so that's great. It has a more practical boot, and it doesn't have a sloping roof to upset my wife. In fact, my wife said the Model 3 was like a toy car. So I'll have to show her a picture of this and see what she says. The Uniti One comes out in 2020. It's coming out in the middle of the year. It's £15,100. It gets you 96 miles of range with a 12 kilowatt hour battery. You can also get double the battery to, unsurprisingly, get double the range. And I like the look of it. It's somewhere between a Twizy and an E-Up. And the front seat has a Tesla Semi vibe, because it's the one seat in the centre. I think it's kind of cool looking thing. And as I say with all of these cars, really the more the merrier. That's the great thing about 2020, is that we're getting flooded with them. So that's the Uniti One. Kia e-Niro Take 2. The first one they did, the one that I've got, is called the First Edition, at least in Europe. I'm not sure whether they call it that in America, but anyway, yeah, so we had the First Edition. First Edition was their way of saying, well, it's crapper than it will be later. And it's crapper than the one in Korea. Didn't have the LED headlights, didn't have an app, but it's still a fantastic car. It got the awards, got plaudits from everyone, and it got a sprinkling of happy drivers, but not enough happy drivers because they didn't produce the 900 that they said they were going to make. Kia haven't released the exact details yet, but you can bet your ass it's just going to be the same as the Soul, but in the e-Niro shape. And since we can already see what the Soul looks like, there's videos on the internet, loads of people have reviewed them. It will be, the e-Niro will be the car that it should have been when it was first released. So bigger screen, we'll have the app, LED headlights. The price will also go up. So EVM, Electric Vehicle Man, is a YouTuber. He seems to think it will be about £1,800 more expensive. That makes it a £34,795 car. So even with all the cars coming out in 2020, I'd argue that that's still very competitive. You've got to remember that the standard range Model 3 is £38,500. Tesla may have changed that price twice by the time you watch this video. And it's still not, and the Model 3 is still not an e-Niro shape, and that shape of the e-Niro is, I think, more attractive to most families, because you just can't get away from that Model 3 having a pretty impractical boot. When the Model Y comes out, that's going to be about £46,000. So the e-Niro will still be a great deal. Not to mention the fact that the Model Y is probably not going to be available until 2021. The Audi Q4 e-Tron. So the first e-Tron came along, everyone talked about how damn thirsty it was, and no one talks about it much anymore. And I don't think I've seen one driving around yet, but it's difficult to tell because it just looks like any other Audi. And since I can't even tell the difference between a Clio and a Zoe very well, there's no chance of that, is there? I wouldn't know. If it went zooming past, I wouldn't know if it's an e-Tron. But having actually sat inside one at Fully Charged Live, I was really impressed. It's a beautiful, well, it's an Audi, so it's classy, solid, well-built car. So 2020 will bring us the Q4 e-Tron, and I prefer the look of it to the normal e-Tron. So I've no doubt it'll continue in the Audi tradition of being slick, classy and thirsty, and hopefully they'll have made the drivetrain a little bit more efficient this time round so it can actually give Tesla a run for its money. So £47,000 with an estimated range of 280 miles. It will go head-to-head with the Model Y, and it'll probably eat a few I-Paces for lunch, although I would still rather have an I-Pace. The Porsche Taycan Cross Turismo. This was shown off in Geneva in 2018, and it's just an inflated version of the Taycan that they've already released. And I'd say it looks pretty good. They're obviously going to want to get this out as soon as possible because the crossover market is already getting pretty crowded. You'll hear people saying that this is a Model X competitor, but I don't see it, because if you've actually been inside a Model X, they're absolutely enormous. And this looks a bit more squat. In fact, it's 20 centimetres shorter than the Model X. It's going to start at about £80,000, although Porsche do love their options, so that probably won't have any wheels. The Model X is also still quicker than this. It looks like a classy beast anyway. See, this has a sort of iRobot sensibility that I think Mercedes are going for, but this actually does it with a bit more class, don't you think? I'm just a sucker for black, white and blue highlights. The XC40 Recharge is Volvo's first full EV. It's all-wheel drive, and just like the Polestar 2, it features a Google operating system. Bad news is that means you don't get Apple CarPlay. Good news is it does do over-the-air updates. And in fact, it's amazing that not very many cars can still do over-the-air updates. It's quite amazing that so few EVs have caught up with Tesla in that regard, because over-the-air updates is one of the best things about having a Tesla. Tesla owners go properly smug mode when they talk about waking up in the morning and they've got a brand new car. Bastards. At £49,000, the XC40 is pretty much the luxury end of the market, although it's still cheaper than the BMW iX3. The range is 249 miles, and Volvo say its 75 kilowatt-hour battery charges to 80% in 40 minutes, and that's at a charge rate of 150 kilowatts. Although I have a feeling they're being a bit conservative with those numbers, because the Niro has a smaller battery, but it charges at only 77 kilowatts, and it doesn't take very much longer than 40 minutes. So it's a lovely looking car, and I think it'll sell really well. Plus, I really love the way they've done all those studio shots with the kind of salmon pink. I think it's pretty funky. The Mercedes-Benz EQV. Is it weird that this is one of the EVs I'm most excited about? So if you want an EV van-style people carrier, there's not much choice in the UK. You just got the Nissan ENV200, but the newest model is about as much good as a chocolate teapot because it rapid gates and they haven't produced a fix. Oh god, I just said another gate. I have zero need for a van, and I've already gone on a bit too much about how I dislike Mercedes-Benz design, although this is far more subtle and restrained. But an 8-seater EV with a range of 251 miles, yes please. You've got luxury taxi firms like Addison Lee are going to love these, and the more big cars like this that get rid of diesels, the better. So at number 25 we have the Mazda MX-30. Finally we have some movement in the EV space from Mazda. So firstly I've got to say I've got a soft spot for Mazda because I used to have a 323F and I used to love that car. In fact, that was the first car that I really sort of enjoyed driving in. I got it quite soon after passing my test, and I absolutely loved it. This, though, is a strange beast. Firstly, I think they've done a fantastic job with the design, both inside and out. It looks pretty funky to me, and hurrah for more eco materials inside, but it's woefully inadequate specs-wise. It has a usable battery size of just 32 kilowatt hours, which gives it a range of just 124 miles. 124. So it's effectively a city car in a crossover package. Pricing hasn't been announced yet, but it should be about £27,000 with the government grant. It just doesn't seem like that great a deal. Having said that, I really do like the direction that they're going, and I'm looking forward to seeing it in the flesh. The Ford Mustang SUV. Several years ago, before we had a daughter, we decided to drive across America, and it was my dream to drive across in a Mustang. It's one of those things I'd always wanted to do. It was something I wanted to tick off the bucket list. So when it came to choosing the hire car, I ticked on the Mustang convertible and I was ready and raring to go. And then we turned up and my wife decided actually she wanted something more sensible, so we ended up with a Nissan Sentra, which was very sensible and boring as hell. So the Mustang, I'm not even a petrol head, but the Mustang has a pretty important name, doesn't it? And Ford are producing their first proper EV with the Mustang SUV, which apparently is going to come out in 2020. It is apparently going to have a 370-mile range. I'll believe it when I see it. I think they're probably going to go for sort of Tesla Model X probably costs, I imagine. I think they'll go pretty top end since it is the Mustang name we're talking about. You know, Ford are a big company, and hopefully they'll have battery supply sorted out. It should be released, they've said the end of 2020, so I imagine I'll put it around sort of November time. Consider my appetite whet. So there ends my rundowns of EVs of 2020. I reckon you can probably double that list because I think there are some manufacturers that haven't really announced their plans yet and will probably surprise us. So which of these cars is the most important? I would have to say, looking at the numbers, it's going to be the ID3. Or perhaps it's best to say just Volkswagen's MEB platform is going to be the most important thing because it's going to end up in so many different cars all across the VW group. So I was thinking about how best to rank all of these EVs, but actually that's the great thing, isn't it, is that there's so many different EVs for different people. If I were to say, well, the best EV is the Volkswagen ID3, well, someone else will say, well, no, I've got a big family, so that's not perfect for me. In which case, maybe the EQV, the Mercedes van, is going to be the best option for them. Some other people are going through a midlife crisis, like I'm on the verge of, and they'll want something a bit sportier, so then they'll go with the Porsche, or something a little bit cheaper. Talking of that, Mazda really should do an MX-5 EV, shouldn't they? It's another hairdresser car, I know. So if you want my opinions, best value small car, I would say the Zoe, because you can't go far wrong with the Zoe. Best value city car, any of the VW e-Up derivatives. Coolest car, I think the Polestar 2 for me. Funkiest car, Honda E. Or the cutest car, you could say the cutest car. The most intriguing, well, for me, that's the Mustang, because we haven't seen it yet. I'm just intrigued to see what they can do with the Mustang name. The ugliest interior, well, that has to be the DS. I'm sorry if you like it. I mean, even more sorry if you actually designed it. So we still don't know all the details about all these cars, but, you know, it's wonderful to have the choice. And to think that 5 years ago, what choice did we have? It was like 5 cars. So we've made so much progress, and it's a damn exciting time to being obsessive about EVs. So which car has tickled your fancy? Which have you pre-ordered? Which ones have I forgotten? Oh God, did I mention the Model Y? Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon-ish. It has a more practical boot, and it doesn't have a sloping wife. Sloping wife. It has a more practical boot. It has a more practical boot, and it doesn't have a sloping roof to upset my wife.